whilst we are just...
Oh.
There we go. Everyone now knows recording is in progress. Everyone who is already on, just get your chat boxes open, because we do want to make this as interactive as is possible for the fact that we are not in the same space. Hello. So what would be good whilst we're just waiting for people to join is, can people just put in the chat and let us know actually where you are in the world? Hello, Ash.
Hello.
Hello. Just because obviously we haven't got a clue where you all are, and if any of you are somewhere hot and exotic, then we should be very envious. Matt is on a building site in Brighton.
And Boreham Wood certainly isn't hot or exotic, unfortunately, but
in our imagination, Craig, it is one of the 7 wonders of the world.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. Well, we have got, actually, the exciting thing about Boreham Wood, if you didn't know it already, is EastEnders is filmed here. Big Brother is filmed just down the road from me, and they've just opened up a new Sky Studios. So we've got about 5,000 jobs created in the area. We used to have James Bond, Indiana Jones, we filmed here as well. So yeah, it's quite a famous area, I guess.
Wow.
I'm going to take your Boreham Wood, Craig, and I'm going to give you Shepperton Studios, a few miles down the road from me, where Netflix have just bought a huge bit of land. They've done this massive investment in Shepperton Studios. Yeah, so interesting.
Amazing. So we're kind of competing, because I've got the Sky Brigade and you're on the Netflix side.
Wow. So any recruiters on here who cover Boreham Wood or the studios, where was it, Rhonda?
Shepperton Studios.
Shepperton, there are jobs going there. So get canvassing this afternoon.
And if we can just ask, if you wouldn't mind, of course, we want it to be an open session, but just sticking yourselves on mute for now so we don't get too much background noise coming through, that would be awesome.
Which is quite ironic considering Matt and I are in the middle of a building site.
Can't hear a thing.
Oh, I'm loving it, Matt. Yeah, Shepperton Studios for the next series of Squid Games. Absolutely. Talking of stress, everyone, how stressful was it watching Squid Games?
My wife wouldn't let me watch it. She'd heard about it, and I said, should we watch that next? She was like, nope, no interest. So I haven't actually, I think one of the few people in the world who
hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
Oh dear. That's a bit like when we started watching Game of Thrones, 1 episode in, and decided we're not making that commitment.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
I'm a fan of the books, so yeah, still waiting for him to finish those.
Right, we are going to talk about stress, we promise, although we could quite easily just talk about box sets. So,
change the title and go for it.
Yeah, exactly, whatever we want here. Richard Harrison in the house, nice to see you. Recognising some names on here. Candy.
Hey, Michelle.
Hello. Charlie's on there. We got a couple of Charlies. We got Charlie from the REC, and we have Charles from Projectus.
Got a few Cititec guys representing, so thank you guys.
Lots of very familiar names. Some of our mental health and recruitment champions and supporters. Nice to see you all.
Wonderful. Right, we are at 61. So yes, as just keep yourself mute. We are going to use the chat box. Craig is going to be our compere for today, so he will be keeping an eye on the chat box, as will I. So fire your questions in there. Can we just have a little thumbs up that everyone can hear us all okay? Put a little thumbs up. Perfect.
There's a bit of interference. Is that just me?
No, I've got that as well. If everyone can sit themselves on mute, that would be awesome. And hopefully that will go away.
There we go. Is that all right? Any good?
That's better. Brilliant.
Perfect. Excellent. Good stuff. Wayne Brophy, nice to see you. Alex Dover. So we got some of the RDLC pirates on here as well. So
hi, Michelle.
Hello. My favourite plant-based recruiter.
I did
Veganism, wahey.
Sorry, Rhonda.
Sorry, Wayne. I said, was it Claire? Was it your birthday yesterday? Happy birthday if it was. I'm sure I saw that somewhere.
Perfect. We've just come for it. So I told you all invited for lunch. This is great. I've got sort of 67 people having lunch with me and I haven't had to cook. Do get yourself a glass of water, not vodka, water, if you haven't already got one. I'm going to get started. Record has been pressed, so if people do have to nip off to close a deal, then go for it. If it's to deal with sort of one of those Z-list clients that are not giving you any feedback and want really low fees, then just ignore their calls. But yes, it's recorded for anyone that does need to leave. Let's use the chat box, ask all your questions. But firstly, I just wanted to sort of introduce the event, introduce my wonderful co-hosts, and then they can introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about their stories and why it is that they got invited to come and share lunch with us. So today is Stress Awareness Day. Recruitment, it is stressful, let's be honest. It's why I've loved it for so long, because that adrenaline buzz that you get when you close a deal. This is not about trying to make recruitment non-stressful, because that's just not going to happen. This is about what stress actually is, how we cope with that, and how you can help yourself, but also for those of you who run teams, how you can help your teams as well. And I have invited 3 wonderful people to give different views, because they cover different areas of recruitment and also of sort of stress and mental health. So I wanted us to have a broad range here. It is also Movember, men's mental health and health as a whole. So as you can see, got 2 wonderful guys on the panel. So firstly, I'm going to just introduce Rhonda. Rhonda is the founder of Mental Health and Recruitment. And Rhonda, tell us a little bit about you, your story, mental health and recruitment, and kind of why are you here today?
Oh, thanks, Michelle. I'm going to try and keep this really quick, because I do love a chat, and it'll be the end of the session. I'm Rhonda D'Ambrosio. I've worked in the recruitment industry for the last 24 years, probably done most of the jobs out there. Used to be a temps and contracts biller before I set up my own recruitment company in 2007. I diversified that offering and kind of moved more towards quality of thinking and supporting recruitment business owners and leaders back in 2013, after my mum got a diagnosis of motor neurones disease. And for anybody that's familiar with MND, or ALS as it's known in the States, it's a very degenerative disease. And my mum basically lost her ability to talk, first of all, and then her ability to move, and eventually her ability to breathe, which is when she subsequently lost her life. But throughout that whole time, and it was a very short window, my mum's mental state, you know, if you are familiar, you'll know that people are mentally very, very present. So even though their body is failing them, their mind is very, very sharp. And at the time, I think we didn't appreciate how mentally strong my mum chose to be in the face of knowing that she was going to lose her life. And when I went through the process after losing my mum, and I grieved for my mum, when I kind of hit on that, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. The power of kind of our quality of thinking and our mindset, you know, if we can harness that, that can be very, very beneficial for our own mental health. That kind of combined with the work that I started to do in the industry, and I work with a fantastic guy, I don't know if some of you would know him, John Pullen, who invited me into his business to support him and his team. He was my biggest champion. He valued the work that I was doing, understood why it was really, really vital for our industry. And very tragically, and the reason mental health and recruitment is set up is because John took his own life in 2017. So that's why mental health and recruitment exists, because, you know, some of the strongest people out there, some of the biggest minds, some of the really effective workers that, as Michelle said earlier on, thrives in this industry and thrives on the stress of the job, still get impacted by mental health. So that's who I am, that's what I do, and it is a bit of a labour of love and a passion project, and hopefully that wasn't too long for an intro.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Rhonda. And yeah, I work with John Pullen at Computer Futures at S3, and yeah, what a guy. Craig, I want you to introduce yourself next. Craig is one of the partners at Cititec Talent. So he is sort of, Rhonda's representing the recruitment industry, and Craig is representing recruitment business leaders on here. So tell us a bit about you, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, for having me today. So Craig Ron, I've been with Cititec for 23 years. I didn't really know what stress was all about, to be honest with you. You know, you have those days where you come in and say, feel stressed today. But sadly, I went through some heartache in around about 2018. I lost my brother, went on a kind of downward spiral of grief and depression. And it was really when I realized, you know, how to help myself through the help with Michelle, with Matt. I didn't know Rhonda at that stage, that I realized a lot of the, outside of grief, a lot of the mental health issues that I was suffering with at the time were down to stress. And it was when you can work on that stress, manage that stress, it really helps, not only just in work, but in every place and shape of life. I've always been quite passionate about mental health. I'm a mental health first aider, now in the business as well. But at Cititec, I think we were one of the first agencies that really took on a bit of a mental health mantra. And I've got a story that I'll tell you guys later on about how I feel the industry may or may not have evolved. But look, that's me in a nutshell, and looking forward to hosting this today.
Lovely. Thank you, Craig. I'm not sure if it's your headphones that are a bit static, actually.
Oh, no, don't say that. I can't really change it now.
They're kind of dipping in and out, but we'll see how we go. I love
Brilliant.
that. Team's telling you.
Now you tell me.
Right, Matt, I want to sort of introduce you. Matt's coming from a slightly different side. Matt has been a hiring manager for many, many years, has hired sort of hundreds and hundreds of people, but I've invited Matt as we're going to call him a mental health survivor and ambassador, and now does a lot of work with people using the power of their breath to help with their stress levels. So Matt, if you could give us a little bit of your story, that'd be great, please.
I'm not sure there's anything left to say. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. But I think we should have a quick whip round with a host of recruiters. We should be able to buy some new headphones for Craig. Hi there, everybody. My name is Matt. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. So I guess on the different side of this story, I'm a hiring manager, or certainly have been for many, many businesses. I had a career in marketing and digital transformation, leading some of the world's leading consultancies in that space. And I've hired personally over 1,000 people and been responsible for building teams, both nationally and internationally. So I understand the stresses from the hiring manager's perspective, from the company's perspectives, and from a business leader's perspective. I've also sort of managed, led, and mentored teams for, as Michelle says, many, many years. That kind of dates me, but certainly for 20, 25 years in the industry. I've had my own sort of skirmishes with depression. I speak quite openly about it, and I think it's important that men especially, but not exclusively, talk about their mental health publicly, if they can, because there are still many stigmas attached to it. I suffered from depression in my late teens and early 20s when I was at university, resulting in attempting to take my life for the first time, and sadly didn't deal with the underlying issues and felt the same in my late 30s and early 40s. Fortunately, have recovered from that and spent the rest of my life thinking about how I can manage stress and anxiety, but also help others. So like Craig, I have mental health awareness qualifications. I've become an instructor and a breathwork coach, so teaching people how to breathe. And many of the people who I work with are referred to me with anxiety, for example. So I support people with how to manage stress, and I help them perform better. So that's why I'm here, Michelle. I'm really excited about the conversation.
Thank you very, very much. And I'll just give a little quick intro to myself. Michelle, over 20 years in recruitment. So anyone on here who wasn't born in 1997, who is younger than that, my recruitment experience is older than your life, which is terrifying. Fax machines, those things, we used to send CVs out, just probably ended up in piles on the floor. Anyway, so I was in recruitment, absolutely loved it, was at Computer Futures for 8 years. I then went and joined one of my clients as the in-house recruitment manager. They were a Microsoft Gold partner. And then I set up my own little in-house business working with tech startups. And I loved it. Great fun, loads of money. It was brilliant. And I had no plans to ever change until one morning I woke up and I basically hit the floor. I thought I was having a heart attack. Fortunately, it wasn't a heart attack, but I got rushed off to hospital. There wasn't really anything wrong. Similar story to kind of Rhonda's was the fact that I didn't realize how much stress can actually impact us. I had been getting ill a lot. I was tired. My digestion wasn't working properly. My memory wasn't working properly. And I just thought this was normal. That's just what happens in your 40s. And then it actually, after I sort of hit the floor the first time, I did what most of us do, and I ignored it. I carried on for the next 3 years, business as usual, until I was found collapsed on the bathroom floor and thought enough's enough. So went away to sort of find out what was wrong, thought I was going to be told about food, and actually I wasn't. I was told about stress. And I'm going to sort of share with you in a moment, just before we kind of open up to Craig asking us the questions, what actually stress is, so that to see if you recognise any of the things that I went through. But having basically healed myself through understanding stress and how to either reduce it or to cope with it, I decided to retrain, and I'm now a health coach and a CBT practitioner. I work predominantly in the recruitment industry because the fact that I get it, I've been in it. I'm very proud to say I'm an ambassador for mental health in recruitment, and I do a lot of one-to-ones. I do corporate talks and employee assistance programs, because fundamentally stress is sort of the key reason that so many of us get sick. The quick science bit of it is that stress is good. Stress is our body's way of keeping us alive, but stress is meant to be short. Stress is meant to be kind of, we're a caveman and we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and stress lasts for about 10 minutes because you either escape or sadly you get eaten. Now, stress is no longer like that. Stress is chronic. From the moment we wake up to that alarm that has gone off probably before we want it to checking our emails, to getting to work and the client not wanting to pay the fee, the candidate dropping out at the last minute, we are basically getting hit with micro stress doses throughout the whole day. And when our body is in a chronic state of stress, it becomes inflamed. Inflamed means on fire. And that is the cause of pretty much all disease. From simple things like acne, which is inflammation of the skin, through to cancer, which is inflammation in a tumor form, through to Alzheimer's, which is inflammation in the brain. So if we want to keep healthy for longer, we need to get that inflammation down. We need to reduce the stress. Also, when we're in a state of stress, our body's number one thing is to keep us alive. So suddenly our immune systems don't work properly, so we all get colds a lot. And I'm not talking about that COVID thing. I'm talking about those colds that most of us just kind of get on with and bring into the office and pass around. We're exhausted. We can't sleep properly. How many recruiters struggle with sleep? Our memories aren't great. We've got digestive problems. We might be drinking too much. All of these things are kind of related to stress. So what we want to do today is sort of share some hints and tips and answer some questions to help you work out what you can actually do to sort of lead a sort of not a less stressful life, because life happens, doesn't it? But this is about how you can then deal with it and cope with it. So before I hand over to our host with the most, Craig, has anyone got any questions so far before we start? You're basically joining the four of us for lunch, and we're going to have a good chat, and hopefully you're going to come and fire some questions at us as if you would if you were interrupting us in a restaurant. Right, Craig, I'm going to hand over to you then to start with, get the conversation going.
Thank you. Is this microphone working any better? I've got a different microphone that I'm trying. Is that better?
Yes.
Fantastic.
That's good.
Good. Always have a backup. And actually, some of the stuff you said there, Michelle, is totally right. I used to be this person that would always get colds. I'd catch every single thing going around the office, everything from my kids. Ever since I put the changes into my life that you showed me about, that we can also talk to everyone else about today, I very rarely get sick. And it does make a huge difference. But Rhonda, I'm going to start with you, because I know that you carried out a mental health and recruitment survey recently. So we'd love to hear about the key results that came from that.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, we decided that because we were quite a new organisation and it was something new to the industry, that even though I'd been going out talking to businesses for the last 8 years and I could, talk about the companies I was working with, it didn't really give us a good baseline to say, hey, everyone, we need to take this seriously. So we decided to do the survey to really understand the perception of mental health in recruitment in the industry, the reality of mental health in the industry, and also, I guess, the support and the education that was currently in the industry as well. So we went out to market market, predominantly UK, but we did get results from Australia and Europe and some other places in the world. We had over 2,300 responses, and the key insights were, you know, I kind of want to say surprising, but at the same time, for me, given what we'd been working with and all the conversations we were having at the time, they weren't that surprising. What we got told was that employees, the workforce, individuals in the industry, 90% of them had experienced work-related stress, anxiety, or depression. And that was a big, big number. We know the job is stressful. Nobody disputes that whatsoever. But for us, it was like a, you know, wow, we are living with this. Absolutely. And then interestingly, the amount of employees that also suffered from non-work related stress, anxiety, or depression was 79%. Now, if you flip that to the same question that we asked the business owners and the leaders, 85% of business owners and leaders were saying that they were suffering or had suffered with work-related stress, anxiety, or depression. And 69% of them were also dealing with non-work-related stress, anxiety, or depression. But one of the biggest key insights for us was the fact that employees, the number was about 70% of them would or had sought intervention from a medical professional, whereas our business owners and leaders, only around 40% of those had sought intervention or would seek intervention from a medical professional. And that's when we have to start taking this quite seriously, because if we are leading our people, if we are almost just getting on and coping, like you guys both spoke about, we're going to model that behavior in the people around us. So even though we may say as human beings, as individuals, that we care about this topic and we want to make a difference in our business, if we have this attitude of we're just going to get on with it, we're just going to keep going, it's fine, just crack on, man up, all of the things that we've heard, it's going to be really detrimental to our businesses. So those were kind of a couple of the big key insights that came out. But we also found out that, you know, as an industry, no, we're not equipped to deal with this. We saw that people had very, very good intentions. You know, a huge number of business owners were saying that they would know how to have a conversation with a member of staff that approached them. But the reality was people weren't going to them. There was huge disparity between what our business owners and leaders were saying and what the employees were saying. So it's definitely worth reading. There's a few other bits and facts within there as well, but that was one of the key insights that came out. And, you know, I think it's also fair to say that when we asked people what the reasons they felt the job was stressful for, we gave like a free text field where we said, what do you believe the biggest cause of stress is in the industry? You know, all of the standard stuff came up about the job, but the overarching thing that came out was leadership and management. So yeah, I'll put a link in the comments. It's absolutely worth the read. You know, 1 in 4 employees, Craig, also said that they felt their organizations that what their organizations were doing around mental health or well-being was a tick box exercise or for PR. And that was quite frightening.
Yeah, actually, Michelle and I spoke about something very similar earlier today. And first of all, what I'd like to say on that is I think that if you haven't got someone in your business who has been on a mental health first aid training course, then you probably should. In the same way that by law, there has to be X amount of people per employees to have covered a physical health training course, mental health should be seen in exactly the same way. So if you can go back to your businesses today and see if you have got a mental health first aider, at least one, probably 2, because it is very tough on the one person doing it on their own. But that is something that I would certainly recommend to your business. But I remember about 10 years ago, we had a meeting, the whole company was called down, one of the HR managers gave a speech to say, actually, you know what, if you are suffering with your mental health, don't be afraid to call in and say that, you know, you're having a bad day, a bad moment, you feel stressed, and we're happy to support you with that. And I remember being then called into a separate meeting with an ex-manager and an ex-director to say, I can't believe that they've said that. We're going to have all these people calling in Monday morning, just pretending they're stressed to get days off work. And I thought 10 years later, you know, those days are behind us, those days are gone, that, you know, people are much more open-minded and understand actually that mental health and physical health are on the same page. Until a few days ago when I sent this link to a business leader who I'll obviously keep anonymous and said, oh, would you be interested in bringing some of your guys along to this event? And the response was staggering. Oh no, I think it's a really bad idea. You know, you give people this and they'll just phone up and say that they're stressed, and or if they can't get a deal over the line, they'll say they're stressed, or if they're being lazy, they'll say they're stressed. And it is staggering. So actually, I would have expected that 25% figure to be more, because I don't know how many businesses are really supporting their employees with mental health. I really hope it's come on far greater than it has 10 years ago. Matt, if it's all right, I'm going to come to you next, because you did something incredibly staggering in the past month. And do you want to talk to us about your incredible run that you did?
I can, but I'd quite like to pick up on a couple of the points that Rhonda identified there, if that's okay, and then we can talk about the run. I think that often my experience of businesses is that when these initiatives, for example, mental health or diversity and belonging and new and important initiatives are launched, particularly by HR, they may be sponsored by leadership, but they're not necessarily always participated in by leadership. And one of the things that happened when I expressed my mental health journey, Craig, when I put it on LinkedIn a couple of years ago that I'd suffered from acute depression and suicidal thoughts, was that there was quite a lot of people that were shocked because they didn't necessarily believe that I could have been as successful as I was apparently in leadership with that depression. But similarly, that I might be inhibited in my future career because I had said that I had been mentally ill in the past and continue to have to recover from depression. I see myself as somebody in recovery. And I think that sometimes leaders, the first thing that they can often create stress because they live in the future, maybe 6 months away or a week away or a day away in terms of targets, and they're not necessarily very closely connected. This is not true of all leadership, but it's often the case that leaders are not connected to the day-to-day and the stresses of being in the job, and they're somewhat abstracted from it. I think the second thing is that I would wish that more leaders would be confident enough to talk about their own mental health, their own stress management, because we follow these people and we are guided by them and we behave as they behave. So when Rhonda says that only 40% of leaders sought intervention, other people are going to behave the way they're guided. And if they don't think that it's acceptable to be depressed or to be stressed, they're not going to take it to their manager and they're not going to take it to their leader. They may think that their career opportunities might be inhibited. They might be considered or less considered for promotion, for example. So I think until we normalize the conversation, we've improved during the pandemic, I believe. But until we normalize the conversation and it's done by leadership and across and through the businesses, we're going to still see these instances of really, really poor numbers. So that's just a point of view, Craig. I think that leaders need to be with the team as members of the team and training with the teams. I'd like to see more leaders being mental health first aiders, for example. That's just a perspective and point of view. Michelle.
One thing just off the back of that was I've done a lot of talks on Zoom over lockdown, and I was doing a talk with the recruitment business, and we got to the Q&A bit at the end, and the owner of the business got very emotional. He was having a really hard time during lockdown, and he broke down into tears. And the thing that was the most authentic thing I've ever seen is he did not turn off his camera or his audio. He carried on and he went through it, and him and I almost did a bit of one-to-one coaching in front of his whole team, and he's got a big team. And you could just see at that point, every member of his team went, I am with you 100%. And I am absolutely loyal, and that business has gone from strength to strength. So I completely agree with Matt there, and Craig has been a shining example of this. When I've been doing work with Cititec, Craig is at the front waving the flag for sort of support, quite happily doing videos and talking very publicly about his journey, which has then fed through to the team. So absolutely agree that if our leaders are still saying sort of, oh no, we can't talk about that, then that's a problem. But also, you've got to be able to trust your staff. Surely, if you trust your staff, then if they're telling you that they're having a difficult time, you're going to believe them, and then hopefully you can support them and they'll end up more loyal and higher performing. if you're questioning whether the person is being dishonest, you probably have a bigger problem around whether you're sort of are trusting your staff. So anyway, sorry.
Stress and depression is not a weakness. It's a part of the human experience, and it needs to be acceptable. And if we're going to be able to tackle things like neurodiversity in our cultures, and we must, then things like people needing time to be supported needs to be acceptable and normalized. And that comes top down as much as it comes from, say, HR, or it comes from individuals who care about it passionately. There's still plenty of work to be done, and opportunity, to be honest.
Totally agree. Look, I think I was just going to say that as well. I think in particular in men, it's seen as a weakness to show that emotion, to show in front of your staff that you might break down, you might cry, you might be stressed, you might, to show that vulnerability. But I think you're absolutely right in that. That's what's real. We're all on the same journey. We all feel vulnerable at times. We all feel stressed at times. And if I can't show that to my guys that that's me, and I put up this tough exterior, then how are they ever going to be able to show me when they're needing my assistance? But want to talk about that run you did, cross country run, because for me that was one of the most inspirational things genuinely seen in my lifetime. It was incredible. I followed your journey. Well, I say every step of the way, not physically, because I couldn't do that. But do you want to talk about your run? Kind of what made you do it, and what did you learn from it?
I think it sort of dovetails into, as a business leader, I had been quite open about my mental health. As I say, I think we all have mental health. Every single person, all 68 of us on this call, have mental wellness. And some days it's going to be really good, and some days it's going to be less good. And we need to know the tools and have the support around us for the days that are less good. And also recognize in others when they're having a tough time. And I really agree with you, Craig. Authenticity and vulnerability are not weaknesses. I believe that they are strengths. Having started to talk about my mental health and grown in confidence to do so, because frankly, I'd inhibited my own career opportunities without anyone else getting involved. So I was going to be fine. So I thought, well, what else can I do to be a champion for positive mental health? And I think the run, which was 1,000 kilometers in less than a month, and completed with the London Marathon on top of it, just for fun, was for me a signal, not least to myself, but to many people that I know, to sort of say, okay, it is possible to recover, and recovery is every day. I wanted to champion this conversation about mental health, and that it should be normal to talk about it, that too many people get to acute and chronic stress. And Michelle's point is it can create inflammation. It can also create tragedy, and too many people are unnecessarily suffering and finding themselves in crisis. So decided to run 1,000 kilometers, which is a long way. It meant that I was doing an ultra marathon pretty much every day. I ran every county of England, as a lot of this country, despite not being able to travel for 2 years, that I still hadn't seen. So I ran from Cornwall all the way up through the middle of the country, up to North Cumbria, into Cumbria and Northamptonshire, and then back down again through every county. Met a lot of people, ran with a lot of people, and we raised nearly £50,000 for mental health in the charity CALM, the Campaign Against Living Miserably, who I'll call out here. There's always resources. I think the key thing that I learned was that mental health, we often talk about the person suffering, but I think it's also important we talk about those people around the person who might be in crisis. So if there's somebody in your team, or in the company that you're hiring for that's struggling, often it affects the team around that person. And it's certainly true in families. It's certainly true for my wife. She has to live with somebody who works with their mental health every day. And so what I heard was a sort of thousands of stories, Craig, about people and their experience of mental health, because it's not always the person suffering that needs support. It is the people around those people. So we should also be talking to teams, and we should be talking across companies, not just to the individual who raises their hands and said, I'm having a tough time, but for everybody to sort of say, okay, well, how do you support those people in your company when they are? And how can you be the friend or the sort of the shoulder to cry on in a time of need? So Yeah, it was an amazing run. I'm still coming to terms with I have to pinch myself to remind myself that I did it. But yeah, it was a once in a lifetime thing. I think I'm pleased to say.
Oh, yes, I'd love to see it again. It was incredible, and you raise a brilliant point. I think you're probably in a similar position to me, Matt, and actually all of us are, that as mental health first aiders being involved in this topic pretty much on a daily basis, we all have our support network that we go to as well. Because you take on a lot of I guess stuff, you take on a lot of conversations, and there's certainly people that I go to help me offload as well. So it's a really important point. I just want to remind you guys, please do put any comments, questions in the box. We'd love to come to you if you've got any questions for us. But Michelle, I'm going to come to you next. And I think something that I've heard recently is it actually the responsibility of a company? Is it my responsibility at Cititec to look after my team's mental health? Is that, or should it be someone else's? What's your view on that?
I think I got the answer is outrightly yes, it is, because as a business owner, anything that is going to impact the performance of that person is your responsibility. People often are saying to me, well, what's the ROI? And you go, okay, I can't say that if I talk to somebody for 3 hours, they're going to make 4 extra placements. I can't link that. But what I can do is say that in my own case, I was sick for a week every month. And had I have been working for a business, that would have been a big problem. And now more and more that we give people the tools to help themselves manage their stress, strengthen their mental resilience, the better they're going to be. And in recruitment, resilience is absolutely key. So when I'm talking to people, I'm like, right, well, if you want to make more money as a business, support your people. If you want to win awards, now well-being is part of the awards categories. And fundamentally, if you care about people, so whatever box you're trying to tick, it's only going to benefit you as a business leader. And just going back to what Matt said about supporting the people who support the people, is that I will put my hand up and say that I didn't understand it. I, back in the day, was probably one of those people going, pull your socks up. What do you mean you're having a hard day? I've been very fortunate. I haven't had any struggles myself, certainly that I remember. Maybe I was a bit too drunk to remember it all in my 20s, who knows. But Matt asked me, for anyone that doesn't know, Matt is actually my husband. We are sat in different rooms of the house, but I was the person supporting him on this massive run. I'm the person that supports every day. And I didn't get it. And he asked me to read a book, and I'll put the name in the comments, but the book was called Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. It's only a little thin book, easy to read. I would suggest everybody reads it, because reading that, I suddenly understood how Matt feels and what he goes through on a daily basis. And then going on the mental health first aider course really just solidified that knowledge. So now I know that it's not just pull your socks up, but it's like, okay, we're going to go and get some fresh air. We're going to go and go for a run. We're going to walk in nature. We're going to drink some more water, whatever it is, because when someone is struggling, they're not necessarily going to have the strength to take themselves out for a walk. They need the person next to them to be supporting them with that. So within your teams, this is across the board for people looking out for what's going on. Is there a member of your team behaving differently? Are they normally quite noisy and now they've gone quiet, or the opposite? Are they quite quiet and now they're quite noisy? Checking in with people. I know Craig is often saying, ask twice. Asking once, you're going to get, I'm fine. Fine's not really a feeling. So it's like, no, how are you? So I think that it is very interesting the way that things are changing, and there are still a lot of business leaders who don't think it's their responsibility. And as we know, the recruitment market is booming. So it's a great place to be a recruiter at the moment, and people are moving jobs to go to businesses that are providing support. I know I've spoken to recruiters who have purposely picked new companies to work for because they offer mental health first aid training or wellbeing coaching or breathwork classes. So it's really worth thinking about the bigger picture.
Excellent. I want to come to Rhonda and ask you about the mental health and recruitment pledge, but I think there may be some business leads on here. I'm going to double barrel the question, Michelle, because I think One of the things I always learned as business leader 15 years ago when I started managing teams was you keep your employees at arm's length. They're not the type of people now you can go down the pub with. You can't be best friends with them. Don't add them on Facebook. Don't follow them on Instagram. You know, go out for a couple of beers with them, but then don't stay with them. Go out with the team leaders, that's fine. But you keep them at an arm's length, because when you need to have those difficult conversations, when they're underperforming through other reasons outside of maybe mental health issues, or you need to unfortunately exit them from the business due to poor performance, etc., it's very hard to do that when they're your mates and your friends. As a business leader, I think I know the answer. I'd love to hear from you guys. How are you able to create that separation, if indeed you even need it, whilst at the same time be there to support them when they're at their lowest ebb?
I've always been terrible at this. It's why I've never been a manager. I was terrible. And it's one of the things that, having seen Matt do it, that he has the ability to have one of his sort of team be sort of doing a reading at our wedding, and yet also if he needs to sort of pull him up and have a disciplinary conversation with him, that he will be very respected. So Matt, that's a great skill that you've got. And how do you do that? What
are the tactics there, Matt?
It's a better question than my answer is going to be, I think. I think generally speaking, as a manager, you can be friendly, and it's not necessarily a prerequisite to be friends. I have developed some very positive friendships with some of the people that I've led and managed, but I think that we've always been clear what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so you can't be ambiguous. When something needs to be said, Craig, it needs to be said very, very clearly. It needs to be said quickly, and it needs to be used. You need to be consistent. And so, yeah, I've had conversations with people who I would consider friends, who I've led and managed, which have been difficult. But then you have to sort of say, okay, we're in a professional conversation here, and it's going to run like this. And hopefully the respect that is around your friendship is also carried into that professional sort of interaction. So yeah, it can be difficult. It is also sometimes quite difficult when, for example, you know that somebody's been struggling in some way, but that you do have to also ensure that that person is performing as well as they might be able to do so. And that's where you can get support from HR professionals, for example, or other people in your team, to think about how you communicate what you need to communicate, and how you can be both supportive, but you can also make progress. Because just because somebody's having a bad day doesn't mean that they necessarily have to drop all of their responsibilities. That there is a sort of an acceptable way to behave. So it's give and take. It's a relationship on a case-by-case basis. But I think if people know what is expected, if they can't sustain that on a particular day, they should also know that they can come to you and let you know, and that you're just picking up the slack. We're working together as teams. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah, perfect. Rhonda, I'll come to you, and if I can double barrel that as well with understanding a bit more about the Mental Health and Recruitment Pledge, because it is a great initiative.
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I absolutely echo what Matt was saying there about expectations. And I think the reality of our industry, and looking at it from a leadership perspective, sometimes because of our own stresses, we shortcut, we aren't clear with expectations. And some of the work that we do with our sort of helping managers manage mental health in the workplace course is about helping them almost separate the conversations, because quite often they think, oh, mental health, well-being, that's for HR. My job is just to manage performance, and herein lies the problem. So we work to a framework of actually separating it into 3 distinct areas, where you have performance, you have capability, and you have welfare. And how you approach the individuals in your team will fall into one of those 3 categories. What we try to do, and what we've been very, very guilty of doing, is putting all of those 3 things in the same basket, and they are not equal. Somebody's performance may be impacted because they're incapable, and that incapableness, is that even a word? Incapability, oh my God.
Incapability?
Yeah, somebody look it up. It may stem from the fact they haven't been skilled, they haven't had training, they haven't had the right support, or it may come from the fact that they had something externally impacting them. And because we aren't having the sorts of conversations that Matt has just identified, we're unaware and we get really, really lazy. It's all about the numbers. So what happens is we start hitting people with sticks rather than actually dealing and supporting them with them. And I say with kindness and compassion. You know, a huge criticism I had as a leader in our industry was that I was too nice. And guys, I was never too nice. I just, like my kids say, I'm very fair. And that's what it comes down to. Am I having a fair, respectful conversation with this individual? And have I set very, very clear expectations? You can't expect somebody to open up to you about their mental health and what's going on if you've not been interested, if it's not a psychologically safe environment. And this kind of, Craig, beautifully said, sort of segues into what the Mental Health and Recruitment Pledge is all about.
Compare thing, aren't I?
You are, yeah. We are asking companies to put their hand up and to say that they will commit to changing the way mental health and well-being is viewed and supported in their organisation. And it is taking it beyond it being just a tick box exercise. We're saying, please commit to it. If you commit to it, then we will give you a starter roadmap, an easy to follow framework, which will help you on your way. And just by implementing these 6 core things into your business, you will be in better shape. Now, we know that in recruitment, I'm not saying we're lazy, I'm not saying we're cynical, but we like things done very, very quickly. And so what we've done is we've simplified elements of the government's Thriving at Work core standards, but we've tailored them to our own survey. So we've tailored them to the industry and addressed the call to actions that came out to make it really, really meaningful. So all organizations need to do is have a read of the download pack that they can get on the website. They sign it. But what you are committing to is you're allowing us to survey your team. You're allowing us to speak to at least 80% of your business anonymously to find out the shape that you're in. And the reason that we're doing that is so that in 6 months to 12 months time, when you've finished each of those core areas, we can then survey your business and give you the ROI. We can tell you how this has impacted and measured your organization, because I'm still a recruitment leader at heart. I know that stuff's important. But hopefully that makes sense. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. Details are on the website, but feel free to ping something over if you want more information. We're taking we've got about just under 100 organisations that have signed up to it. And I would say 60 of them are actively taking their organisations through the pledge. We still have a number of companies that are waiting to finish the opening survey.
There's only, 40,000 recruitment businesses in the UK, so we'll get there, get there in the end. Only 39,900 to go, we'll get there. Matt, if you don't mind, I want to come back to you because I think you're the perfect, incredible example of somebody who has been extremely open about mental health, and even with people telling you, shh, don't talk about that because it's going to impact your career, clearly it hasn't. I'd love to know what you do on a daily basis to support your own mental health. You've mentioned you're, I suppose, still recovering, and what do you do every day to support yourself?
Okay, it's a good question. So I kind of consider that I live a very deliberate life, Craig. So, you know, I'm very, very mindful of the amount of pressure that I allow myself to be put under. I've worked in a very high performance environment. I've done a lot of recruitment. And let's consider the hiring managers. You know, they're only recruiting because either someone's left, which means that their work has been dropped and productivity has been dropped, or they need to increase their performance by some measure. I've just been working in an organization that's grown by sort of 200 or 300% in the last 6 months. That's a lot of people coming into the business, and it's very, very stressful for both you as a recruitment community and those businesses that are changing. So I've had to work hard to sort of say, okay, there's only a certain amount of stress that I'm going to tolerate. And I need to have sort of a bento box, you know, those Japanese meals where you've got those little compartments. And I have a number of tools that I use. The first is making sure that I'm really very hydrated, because if I don't drink enough water, then I can't think particularly clearly. I make poorer decisions. My cells aren't hydrated, and that can also accentuate inflammation. I eat a good, nice quality diet. Basically, what you eat today, you're going to be tomorrow. So if you eat shit today, you're going to feel like shit tomorrow. It's a fact. Now, I'm plant-based, but I'm not going to preach a plant-based diet. I'll leave that to people like Sainsbury's and everybody at COP26, because it is one of the most important things that you all consider. But I think if you put good quality stuff in, you'll get good quality stuff out. And that's as much about your mental health as your physical health. What else is in my bento box? I take walks. Like today, I don't know where everybody is. I know most of us are here in the UK, although some people are international. It's absolutely beautiful today. So we've got Sweden as well. I saw that earlier. But, you know, it's a beautiful day, and I'm going to make sure that I get 30 minutes in the morning before I start my day, because as soon as I hit my screen, let's say that's at 8:30, I'm going to be locked into that screen probably for sort of 8 hours. So I need to take breaks, but I'll definitely try to get 30 minutes outside, maybe a run, maybe just a walk down to the beach. I'm very fortunate. A little bit of mindfulness. Now, I know this can sound a bit woo-woo, but I take breaks from my screen and I just sort of like maybe mindfully eat. So I'm not eating in front of my screen. Maybe I'll just take a walk into, you know, round to a shop and pick up some bread or something like that. So just making sure that I am having breaks. Otherwise, we can just get very zoomed with the transaction of Zoom, which is often, or the telephone, however you're doing your recruiting. It can be quite difficult. I know you're also in office environments, and it is good to just take a walk around the block. Finally, I do breathwork, Craig, as we probably have mentioned. So I teach people how to breathe effectively. It is, as along with diet and other sort of factors, one of the most important ways that people can manage stress. You know, when we've always heard it, when people get a little bit stressed out, people say, oh, take a deep breath. And there's a reason for that. So, you know, breath work is something that I teach. I'm happy to do a little bit of breath work now. But so I have this bento box, and every day I make sure that I do 2 or 3 things in that bento box to manage my mental health. The days I don't do it, my mental health will begin to decline. My ability to be able to cope with stress in my working environment will decline. I haven't been able to run for 2 or 3 weeks because I've had this grotty cold. And I'll be very honest, my mental health has been less positive in the last 2 or 3 days as a consequence of that. So it's a daily practice. And I do think of it as a bento box and go, I'm going to make sure that I get 3 or 4 things done. I set a daily intention. And then at the end of the day, I reflect on whether I've reached that intention. And if not, why not? So I'm not hard on myself. I'm kind. But at the heart of all of this is the ability to be able to breathe less stressfully.
I love the, I'm just visualizing that bento box now, and you taking out the little bits from your bento box and making sure you consume them every day. Now, I'll plug certainly the breathing side of things. The Instagram page is Love to Learn to, where I think your breathwork classes are on. And as someone, if I go back to the 10 years ago me, and if someone would have mentioned to me meditation, I would have, you know, it would have been a bit too woo-woo for me, and it wouldn't have made any sense whatsoever. But actually meditation is just breathing. It's probably one of the reasons why a lot of us smoke or vape and struggle to get off it, because it's that deep inhalation of breath that you're taking. So actually, when you change the word meditation for actually just learning how to breathe properly, and the power you can get from that, from whether you're working out and you want to be able to do more reps and learning how to breathe to do that, all the way through to being able to clear your mind, de-stress and relax. Yeah, I think you've got certainly some good tools in your locker there. The one point for me that I think people will struggle in, especially in the recruitment environment today, is not to take on too much. Because if I don't know of a recruitment business that is quiet at the moment, everyone is busy. Business development, I don't think necessarily needs to happen right now, because companies are just phoning in with role after role after role. And actually, I've got to a point in the last couple of weeks, I've taken on too much. I've been managing my clients' expectations and saying, right, I'm going to deliver this role by this date. And as it stands at the moment, I've got a delivery schedule for 2 weeks Friday of what I promised a client CVs for that job. And last night I got another 4 roles through, and I just said to them, I can't take it on, because I think if you take that on, I'm constantly now stressing about what I've got to do every single day to make sure I don't let down clients. And I think that if you guys, anyone watching is in a similar position, if you are taking on too much, speak to your managers, explain to them why you feel it's too much, and what you can do in order to reduce the amount of pressure you're finding. Because I know for me, for my team, we are just almost drowning under the weight of work we've got right now. I don't know if you want to do some breath work now, or if I should go to Michelle.
I think there's a great question that maybe Rhonda might be able to step onto, or there's a question here from Sylvia that's talking about, are there any tips about how, say, an employee could raise the question of mental health and mental health support with an employer? And how could they affect change at a policy, or sort of, a policy level in a really practical way, Rhonda? Because I love the fact it might be instigated by a member of staff, not necessarily HR or a manager, but what could they do if they needed support to get something changed in their company?
That's such a great question. And it's a difficult thing. It is stepping out of your comfort zone, leaning into a huge amount of discomfort to go to your employer. And if they haven't been open to this, I think a really difficult thing to do. So one of the key tips that I would be thinking about is how other people in your organization, how your colleagues, how your peers feel, and whether this is something that could be taken to the business as a collective, so not just on you as an individual. And also looking at what are your key competitors doing? I think, Michelle, it was you that raised that very interesting point about the fact that we are in a war for talent, and recruiters are looking at what their prospective employers can offer that fits into this sort of doing more around well-being. It's not just your standard benefits package. So I think going to your employer very much would depend on the relationship you have with them, but you could be raising things like this, that you've attended a stress awareness webinar, and there are different things going on in the industry. Like, we know that mental health and recruitment, for example, we're such a young organization, and it would be great to think that everybody knows we exist. But I think, as an example, Craig, you and I, when we connected, you were working with Michelle, you knew Kate Hayward, who's also one of our other ambassadors, a member of our professional services team, but I don't think you were aware of what it was that we were actually doing. So actually just bringing people's attention to those sorts of initiatives, to the fact that, hey, did you know that this recruitment organization gets Matt Bagwell in to do this kind of breath work? It reduces people's heart rates in the moment. All of this sort of conversation, I think it is taking it to a forum that you're invited to. So whether it is personal development feedback forms, whether it is, has anybody got any suggestions for our monthly meeting, our annual meeting, any agenda points, it's bringing it up like that. And I think that that's quite sad, that you can't maybe go to your manager and say, hey, mental health is really important, because it should be a board level topic. It should be on the agenda. But if you can't, then, it is perhaps about looking at it as a business case. Like, Michelle, you've said it, I say it, happy people work harder. You will get more discretionary effort back in your business, and therefore more revenue in your organization if you're taking care of your people. So it's perhaps considering your approach. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and look, tell them to come and talk to me if they want to, because I'm living and breathing it in our business. We brought Michelle in to do individual programs with everyone in the organization. There's someone sitting here who I'll remain nameless, who found their passion for running after meeting Michelle, and literally is running every day. Their fitness has improved, their mental health has improved, their well-being has improved, they're proud of their accomplishments and their achievements. I know that we're just so proud of them as well. There was a situation a couple of years ago within my office where we had a very tough situation to deal with, where someone was feeling suicidal. We had the tools in the business to be able to support and help that person and see them absolutely flourish beyond that. I know for myself, if the business hadn't supported me during my grief and my depression, I don't know how bad that could have got. And I met Michelle at the perfect time in my life. So if you are concerned and you want to, obviously, please reach out to Rhonda, Matt, Michelle, but feel free to tell them to come to me. I'm living and breathing it every day. And I know the benefits of having an amazing awareness of mental health within your organization. I'm conscious of running out of time. I've got so many more questions I can ask you guys. We should definitely do a round two. Michelle, you got your hand up. We've got to do Matt's breath work, but go on, you go.
I was going to say really quickly, if each of us just give one thing that we do, and then Matt can do his breath work, and if people have to dip off, they can dip off, but then Matt can do his breath work, and this is all recorded. So kind of a quick takeaway. Craig, what's your number one thing for how you manage stress every day?
Waking up in the morning and talking to myself, telling myself what I'm going to do today, how I'm going to look after myself today, what time I'm going to take for myself today. My diary, apart from today, is always blocked out between 12 and 2. I make sure I book no calls during that time. That's the time where I have my lunch, I do my workout, I get other stuff done that I need to get done. I normally take an hour and a half for that process, but I make sure that I've got that time to do it. So I've got no calls booked in or no meetings booked in during that time whatsoever.
Perfect. Rhonda, what do you do?
Right, I spend time with my dogs. They're my biggest stress reliever. They've been so good. This is the first webinar or live I've done in 2 years that they've not made an appearance. And the second thing that I do is when I'm feeling an emotion about something, I question it. I question why I'm feeling the way. I'm questioning where those thoughts are coming from. It is a really practical technique that moves you from your emotional brain to your logical brain, and that can stop kind of the spiral of emotions or you going into a bad place. That's my quick tip.
Cool. Matt?
I start my day by writing down what is the most important thing that I do that day. And it's not always work. Sometimes it might be to see my daughters. Maybe it's to tidy up the house before my wife complains about it. But I always set my intention for the day. What is the single most important thing? And then all of the other things are less important, and I try to get that one thing done. That's how I manage overwhelm.
Okay.
How about you, Michelle?
I get out of the house. If I do not leave the house, I just have a bad day. So I get out, it changes your hormones, it switches off your night hormone, switches on your day hormone. So as early as I can, and when I'm working at home, I call it my commute. I still leave my house, I go and get a cup of tea and then come back to the house, and then there's my day. So yeah, absolutely, fresh air. Even if it's freezing cold and if it's raining, it doesn't matter, get outside. So just want to say thank you. It is 1 o'clock. We are going to stay on here so that Matt can do a couple of minutes of breathing with us. So if you've got time, stay for that. If you can't because you've got to dash off, I will send the recording out to everyone, but link with Craig, Rhonda, Matt, myself, because we all share lots of different tips on a regular basis. But yes, but thank you very much for everyone for coming, and for my wonderful panel people, lunch partners, whatever. It's been amazing, and I hope you've all found it really helpful, and are going to do just at least one thing to reduce that stress so you can go and be even more successful. So yeah, Matt, let's do a little bit of breathing.
All righty. So yeah, I get paid to go into people's companies and do breathwork classes. So I work with football teams, Olympians, ordinary people, everyday people. Sometimes it's for something specific, like poor quality sleep. Sometimes it's for things like managing anxiety. Sometimes it's just for fun, and this is just a little bit for fun. But yeah, if your company would like a breathwork class, then do hit me up. I normally play music. I sometimes swear a little bit. I probably will try not to swear this time. It can be great fun. And I did it the other day in an insurance company, 480 people. A couple of weeks ago, I did 58 quantity surveyors while they're in a pub. And believe me, I can make this stuff not seem at all woo-woo, because I understand. I mean, I think meditation is just thinking about trees. I don't call it meditation because that can turn people off sometimes. So I want you can keep your eyes open. I'm not looking at you and we're not looking at each other, or you can close your eyes. And we're just going to do one of the simplest breaths. And there's a gentle irony. We're on a sort of a mental health call and a health call, and I'm going to put up a beer mat. But this is a beer mat. You could draw a square on a piece of paper. This doesn't work in Zoom because it kind of gets confused, but there's a square there. Trust me, if I stick it right next to my face, then you can see there's a square. If I was on the top of my head, I'd be very on trend. I'd look like I was from Squid Game. So I'll stick this square on the top of my head. I'll hold the beer mat. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in for 4. We're going to hold for 4. We're going to breathe out for 4. And then we're going to hold for 4. And this is called tactical breathing. It was developed specifically in and around the Navy SEALs. It's now used in many, many situations where people are in highly confrontational frontiers, maybe in the NHS. I think it's a particularly good breathwork for recruiters. So just before you're meant to make that critical call with a hiring manager who owes you money or feedback, or just before you're ringing up a candidate who's really pissed you off because they've got 4 jobs and they're sort of playing off, or whatever it is that's going on, or you've got a conversation with your boss about stress, maybe use this box breathing or tactical breathing if you look it up on the internet. So we're going to breathe around the box. I want you in your mind's eye, if you're closing your eyes, to imagine a cube in your eyes. And then what you do is you just trace your breath up the side of it, across the top, down, and across. And as you're doing it, I'll explain what's happening. So let's do this together, breathing together. Inhale through your nose. So close your mouth, breathe through your nose. In, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. And you just go round, you're holding at the top, exhaling down the side. So in your mind's eye, you try to intensify the picture of this cube in your eyes, in your mind's eye, or if it's on a piece of paper in front of you, you just trace your finger around it and deeply concentrate on that shape as much as you are doing with your breath. What you're doing here is moving your autonomic nervous system from the sympathetic, that tiger situation that Michelle was talking about, into the parasympathetic, where we feel relaxed and calm. This is working with your body's biochemistry. There's no woo here, Craig. This is all science. And I would breathe around this box maybe 10 times, and then I would just relax my attention. So let's just go around one more time. Hopefully I'm keeping count for you. I'm probably on my exhale now, holding for 4. One more time, inhale for 4, all through your nose. Hold your breath at the top for 4, exhale for 4, and finally hold for 4. Then I would relax my attention. I would just take 2 or 3 nice, positive, deep breaths deeply into my lungs. Try to get the breath down to your stomach. Just take that nice, big, deep breath in. Just sigh out through the mouth. Again, nice, big breath in through the nose, sigh through the mouth, and relax. Pick up the phone, make the call, make the sale, get the CV off the candidate, whatever it is you need to do. So when you feel a little bit of stress building, go to box breathing. It's the #1 breath work for managing stress. All righty. Thank you very much, Michelle. Back to you.
That's make you feel super relaxed, isn't it?
Oh, anyone need a nap?
Anything now. That's brilliant.
So Sunday night, 8:30, Instagram, love to learn to, free breathwork class, music, bit of swearing, lots of laughter, deep relaxation, perfect way to end the weekend and start the week. Anyone got any final little comments or questions before we set you all off for the rest of your day?
So we've got a question here from Veronica. How honest should one be in the interview when asked about stress tolerance? From being burned out earlier on, I'm afraid that being honest, I'm going to rule myself out as damaged or being difficult. Matt, that's got to be a question that you can answer.
I think, first of all, always be honest in an interview environment, if you can be. It's unlikely that you're going to be asked about stress. But be prepared if somebody sort of says, how do you deal in a stressful situation? First of all, be honest that you understand what stress is and talk about how you're able to manage it. If you're not going to be ruled out as damaged if you sort of say, okay, I recognize that it's possible to get stressed. So this is how I try to manage it, even if it's just the tips that we talked about today, because we all get it. No one should really be penalized for being honest that they have experienced it, but talk about how you've learned to deal with it. So flip the narrative to the positive and go, yeah, I have suffered with stress in the past. However, these are the ways that I manage it. And I'd really be interested in bringing those sort of ideas and techniques into the team. Think about how you can contribute your experience to the manager, as opposed to consider yourself about to be penalized. Hopefully that helps answer that question.
Yeah, I'd also like to step in there because I placed someone with burnout a few months ago into a role with Switzerland. They hadn't worked for a year. They'd been suffering from burnout. They were actually quite nervous about going into the role, and they asked me, what I should say to the hiring manager. And actually, it's a really simple question to answer. If someone approached me like that during an interview and was honest enough about burnout and how they're dealing with it now, that would not prevent me from hiring them in the future. If there are managers where they wouldn't hire you based on that, they're not the types of companies you're going to work for anyway, because they clearly don't have mental health at the forefront of what they're doing. Actually, the company who hired my guy, and happy to say who it was because it was an incredible feat they did, it was KPMG, a huge management consulting company. We spoke about the burnout issue that the guy had suffered. They loved him, and they initially started him on 2 days a week to see how he could cope. They gave him flexible working hours. He could work as long as or as little as he wanted. They increased their onboarding process by an additional week to support him in the onboarding. And actually, he's doing 5 days a week. He absolutely loves it. And the support he's been getting from KPMG is amazing. So really, if you're afraid about being honest to a company about mental health suffering in the past because of how it might impact your application, if it does negatively impact your application, then not the type of firm you should be joining anyway.
Okay, amazing. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Please feedback, because if you have enjoyed it and you'd like us back again, I'm sure that, as Craig said, there's so much more that we could talk about. There's only so much in an hour that we can cover off, but any questions you have at all, anything that maybe you didn't want to ask publicly, contact whichever one of us is sort of relevant to help you, or send me the email and I will send it to the right person. But yeah, I really hope it's helped. Recruitment is stressful, but it's brilliant, and it's one of the only industries that you can make the money that you can make and have a lot of fun whilst doing it, whilst doing good for the world. So it kind of ticks all the boxes when you're looking for your reason for being. Does the world need it? Yes. Are you good at it? Yes. Do you love it, and do you get paid for it? It's like, it's all round winning. But you've got to look after yourselves, because you don't want to end up like the four of us did, struggling with sickness because we were ignoring the fact that we were stressed. So any of you growing your mows for Movember, look forward to the photos of that. I'm glad to see that Matt took my advice and didn't decide to grow a mow, because it's not all right on him. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And it's been a pleasure. And thank you to my wonderful co-hosts. It has been a joy as always. And the recording will be sent out as soon as I've got it uploaded somewhere. I will send it out to everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.